Hanging out down the street, you can find the cast of That 70s Show, Fox's go-to sitcom from 1998 to the year 2006, lasting 8 seasons and an even 200 episodes. Have you seen all 200? That 70s Show had an ensemble that found a charismatic group of characters in the Wisconsin burbs making the most out of that basement and that decade called the 70s. The characters were so great and the show was so funny that even if you didn't know anything about the 70s, you could still enjoy it. Or if you knew everything about the 70s, like the people who lived during the 70s, you could also enjoy it too. Have you ever watched That 70s Show with, somebody from the 70s? Every 5 seconds they're gonna be like, oh yeah, I had that couch. Oh yeah, I had those cups. Oh yeah, I had a friend like that. Oh yeah, I wore those pants. Oh yeah, I did that disco dance. All that 70s stuff. But just like the real 70s, That 70s Show is over. So let's find out what the happened to the cast of That 70s Show.
Just face the fact, Hyde. You're down there, and I'm up here, and I am invincible!
Kelso, are you okay?
I think I fell!
Let's start off a little light because, things are gonna get pretty dark soon. So yeah, the endearing, the reasonable, and the charming, and the hilarious nerd Eric Foreman, played by the charming, hilarious nerd Topher Grace, truly made his mark on That 70s Show. He always had some smart-ass thing to say with a little smirk. And for 7 seasons, he provided a balance to the antics of the rest of the basement-dwelling pals that he had. But when season number 7 ended, Topher Grace left That 70s Show to focus on his movie career. Rumor has it he didn't really exactly get along with the rest of the cast. Not that they didn't like each other, it's just that group clicked and he didn't really click as much. Kind of kept to himself. He wanted to do more serious, artsy-fartsy things, which he would eventually. I remember the first time I saw Topher Grace in something that wasn't That 70s Show, and it was Traffic, and he was like smoking crack, and I was like, whoa! I've seen Eric smoke things plenty of times, but it never was crack! But that was the first time we were like, okay, yeah, he wants to be a serious actor, and he can. He just needs to find the right projects. And unfortunately, only sometimes the projects were right, causing him to be limited to some generic fare like Win a Date with Tad Hamilton and In Good Company. But he did come out strong with a Marvel adaptation, Spider-Man 3 playing Venom, and say what you want about this movie and this performance. He did the best with what he had, and it was very impressive for him to nab this role, the anti-Peter Parker. Speaking of being anti-things, David Duke and the KKK. He played David Duke for Spike Lee. Topher even moved into writing, providing the story for Take Me Home Tonight. But we do have to admit that Topher Grace didn't make the biggest impact on the big screen, but he is able to, every now and then, work alongside some very talented people, like Christopher Nolan in Interstellar. Even though I don't really remember him being in Interstellar, but he was in Interstellar, and that's impressive.
Okay, let me make something abundantly clear. You have a responsibility.
But what is perhaps the coolest and the nerdiest thing about Topher Grace is that he is an avid movie buff, not unlike Eric Foreman. But this dude is more nerdy than your average movie buff. He makes fan edits of Star Wars prequels. That means he takes the Star Wars prequels and re-edits them to his liking, because he's a nerd. He also does that with The Hobbit and more. But he has kind of nicely tied his career together when he landed his first sitcom since That 70s Show in 2021 with the series Home Economics.
Shut up!
While Topher Grace made do, Mila Kunis exploded following that '70s show, in which she played the character of Jackie, the popular spoiled brat who changes her ways as the show progresses. But like her character of Jackie, Mila Kunis showed genuine growth and maturity when it comes to her career and stuff. Yes, she continues to voice Meg Griffin on Family Guy, but her resume has a pretty strong collection of movies that show that she's a very capable actress across many genres, like comedy and action and psychological thrillers. She's really good in Forgetting Sarah Marshall. She's alright in Max Payne, very good in The Book of Eli, and she's probably the best thing about the horrible Oz the Great and Powerful movie. Kunis proved that she was a real catch that could break away from the sitcom world, and undoubtedly her comedic chops were spot on, as evidence in movies like Friends with Benefits and Ted, reuniting her with Seth MacFarlane. But it was her incredible turn as Natalie Portman's rival in Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan in 2010 that earned her more admirable praise, even landing a Golden Globe and SAG nomination. Kunis would carry on with her career with movies like Jupiter Ascending, which I hear is horrible, but I haven't seen it, but it looks horrible. And she was in the movie Bad Moms, which is a franchise in the making, and I hear it's not that bad. But yeah, she's still out there working and stuff, like with 2022's Luckiest Girl Alive, which has been considered one of her best performances. Mila Kunis is also involved with numerous charities and organizations, such as aiding refugees from Ukraine. Kunis herself is Ukrainian, and she's part of Thorn, an organization that works to protect people from sex trafficking and exploitation. So yeah, now seems to be a good time to mention some former co-stars, one of which is her husband, Ashton Kutcher, and the disgraced Danny Masterson. But first, Ashton Kutcher, who played the good-looking yet dumb Michael Kelso, the sort of character that he made a career out of before trying his best to sidestep it. Kutcher, in a way, has had the most successful post-That 70s Show career, if you look at success in certain ways. He became the first Twitter user to hit 1 million followers, but he is still worth comparing to, at least partly, to Topher Grace, who also left That 70s Show after the 7th season. Ashton, too, had already a budding career going, with the idiot buddy comedy Dude, Where's My Car? And the time travel drama The Butterfly Effect. He was also the host of the hit prank show MTV Punk'd, where he would prank celebrities. But yeah, the post-That 70s Show career of Ashton Kutcher saw What Happens in Vegas, and a very strange remake of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner called Guess Who? Then he replaced the Tiger Blood wizard Charlie Sheen on 2.5 Men, becoming one of the 2 of Men. And he stayed there for the last 4 seasons, which no one watched. Did they? I don't know. He was able to land some more movies, though, like 2011's No Strings Attached, which is the exact same movie as Friends with Benefits starring Mila Kunis. And a year after that, he got his own Netflix show called The Ranch, playing a former hotshot quarterback who's just trying to keep his head above. Also starring Danny Masterson. And because he kind of looks like a young Steve Jobs, he was cast as Steve Jobs in the other Steve Jobs movie, the one that wasn't as good. From there, his cinematic outings have been limited, like a movie called Vengeance in 2022, and a lazy romance film called Your Place or Mine in 2023. Those are kind of the only ones worth mentioning, and they're not really even worth mentioning. But Ashton Kutcher proved to be a very smart investor, dipping into venture capitalism and tech companies. In 2015, he married Mila Kunis, which was kinda cool and sweet and romantic, I guess, if you care about That 70s Show and the romantic arc between Jackie and Michael. But then, unfortunately, because they were friends with Danny Masterson, his wrongdoings and sins have, caused some major trouble for Mila and Ashton. They even made one of those pathetic celebrity apology videos after a letter defending Danny was released to the public, making sure they found the least rich-looking wall in their mansion. They were basically defending his character. This is something that happens in a lot of court cases like this. But yeah, most times they don't really go public. And yeah, it just doesn't really look good when you say nice things about a convicted rapist, even if you didn't know the rapist side of him. Unfortunately, after quote-unquote defending Danny in those character letters, Ashton Kutcher resigned from the aforementioned Thorn organization, the organization that helps stop sex trafficking and stuff. He had to resign because, it didn't really look good when he was saying nice things about Danny, and, he didn't want that controversy to distract from the actual good work that his organization does, which he co-founded with his then-wife, Demi Moore. Y'all remember when he was married to Demi Moore? I almost forgot about that. But yeah, so what the fuck is going on with Danny Masterson? Let's go ahead and get that one out of the way, shall we? He played stoner Stephen Hyde, and Danny was undeniably a fan favorite, with his I don't give an F rock and roll attitude, and as a convicted rapist, he is undeniably the centerpiece of this episode, unfortunately.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Prison.
After that 70s show, Danny had bit parts in movies like Face Off, Yes Man, and The Brooklyn Heist. Later playing Jerry Rubin in The Chicago 8, there too was a TBS sitcom called Men at Work, which ran for 3 seasons. And of course, he would also co-star in The Ranch alongside Ashton Kutcher, which seemed like the perfect reunion until he was written out after a flood of allegations of rape and assault came in. And you know what I've been thinking? All that rape and sexual assault stuff surrounding Danny is something that was strongly foreshadowed in Face Off. He was taking things too far and trying to be, inappropriate or whatever. And then he gets his fucking ass kicked for being a perv. Let's watch that scene and enjoy it for a second.
I'm so sorry!
Okay, so yeah. In 2019, a group of women filed a lawsuit against Masterson and the Church of Scientology, which he had been a member of for years. These women were claiming harassment and stalking. With numerous delays, a mistrial related to 3 counts of rape was declared in 2020. But Masterson wouldn't get off free, as a retrial was put in motion not long after, finding Masterson facing multiple counts of rape in 2023. Finally, in that year of 2023, this fucking year right here, he was sentenced to 30 years to life. That's right, 30 years to life, prompting a full-on backlash against the actor, except for Kunis and Kutcher and his wife, Bijou Phillips. And what's really weird is that Conan O'Brien kind of predicted Danny's fate with a silly little joke about how one day they're gonna get him. So yeah, it's another example of a Simpsons writer correctly predicting the future. The horrible, horrible f***ing future.
Hi, my name is Danny Masterson. Would you like to touch my balls?
I've heard about you. And you'll be caught soon. I know you will.
I will.
That 70s show airs Wednesday nights at 8 on Fox. Thanks for making time for us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, yeah, so how about a breather from all of that horribleness? But let's still stick with a theme. This next castmate would also end up in prison, but this prison was on Netflix and is fictitious. Make-believe. Laura Prepon. She was best known as Donna, Eric's super cool redhead love interest who was way out of his league. Donna was such a cool character, and she was made so likable by this very talented actress. But now, many might know her best as Alex on Netflix's Orange is the New Black. And with this performance, she took this type of character beyond what it could have been. She wasn't just another girlfriend, she was her own person. There were layers to this character. She's like a good actress, y'all. And for it, she rightfully earned major praise, with a whole new audience, even taking home a Screen Actors Guild Award for her work with the ensemble. Laura, too, would direct a few episodes of Orange is the New Black, setting her up for a role as a director on a pair of episodes for that horrible spin-off, That 90s Show. Blah. But it's still cool that she got to direct some episodes. Between both That 70s Show and Orange is the New Black, she had a main role on the ABC drama October Road, coupled with the occasional stint on How I Met Your Mother, and sometimes she would step in for Chelsea Handler on Are You There? It's Chelsea, later landing 2016's The Girl on the Train. But yet her most recent movie appearance was in 2017's The Hero, later turning her attention to writing self-help books and memoirs. Go Donna, go! And finally, we come to Wilmer Valderrama, who played foreign exchange student Fez. Like some of his fellow That 70s Show castmates, he tried his hardest, but didn't really do anything noteworthy on the big screen. But his voice work on Playhouse Disney's Handy Manny is pretty impressive. Guy has a very talented voice. But then Wilmer got kinda crazy into that, MTV thing. He was like dating Lindsay Lohan and hosting that show Yo Mama, which is a show based around, Yo Mama jokes. It was actually kind of funny. But he did really try hard and appeared in some decent films. You could see him in Richard Linklater's Fast Food Nation, a movie called Days of Wrath, and that Tom Hanks movie, Larry Crown, before landing a short-lived NBC drama called Awake, where he played a detective. This would prove useful for his eventual casting in the ever-expanding NCIS universe, joining in the 14th season not long after a key role in the awful Fox adaptation of Minority Report. He just could never really shake the image of Fez out of people's minds when they saw him. Unfortunately, every time I see Wilmer Valderrama, I'm like, hey, look, it's Fez not acting like Fez. What the f***? Why is like a normal deep voice coming out of this man? I don't know, it's just weird to see him sometimes, which just proves that he was so good as Fez, so it's kind of a compliment. Speaking of compliments, I'm gonna give his voice work another compliment. He did a pretty good job in Pixar's Onward and Disney's Encanto.
Don't even.
They also tried to make That 90s Show, which got us all excited, and then, it came out, and nobody really seemed to care. The nostalgia was nice, but it was just like, You just can't recreate the magic that these young actors had. The chemistry cannot be duplicated, and stop trying. And the only watchable parts of That 90s Show is when the cast of That 70s Show stops by, for a guest spot. And it is kind of nice to see the cast back on that set again. Yep, they were all back. Well, except for Danny Masterson. But we all know what the f*** happened to him.